My life and family in California, looking back now, I can hardly believe how picture perfect everything seemed from the outside. My name is Olivia Brooks, and at 38, I thought I had finally found the sweet spot in life that so many people chase after. My husband, Mark, and I lived in an airy, sunlit house on a quiet street in the suburbs just outside San Diego. We had a border collie named Ralph who adored our backyard, a 12-year-old son named Caleb, and a weekend routine that looked straight out of a home magazine. Every morning, California's golden light streamed through our kitchen windows. The scent of fresh coffee would mingle with Caleb's laughter echoing down the stairs as he rushed to get the best spot for breakfast pancakes. Mark took pride in his garden out back. I used to joke that he loved his tomatoes almost as much as he loved his family. Most evenings, after homework and dishes, we'd walk Ralph around the neighborhood, waving to familiar faces, sharing little stories, making plans for the next holiday or camping trip. I had my own career too, a job as a high school guidance counselor I truly enjoyed. Each day gave me a sense of purpose, even on the tough days when the kids came to me with burdens of their own. My circle of friends was tight, highlighted by my best friend since college, Vanessa Carter. We'd meet for yoga on Sundays, swap stories over coffee, and support each other through the messy, beautiful puzzles of family life. Looking back, there was a comforting rhythm to our days. Sure, life was busy, work deadlines, parent-teacher meetings, Caleb's soccer games. But it was the kind of busy that made me feel alive, not overwhelmed. I felt safe, valued, and deeply loved by both my husband and my best friend. Trust, at least so I thought, was the unshakable foundation of everything I'd built. Sometimes, as we sat on the back porch as the sun dipped below the palm trees, I'd marvel at how lucky I was. I genuinely believed California had given me everything I'd ever dreamed of: a close-knit family, loyal friends, a beautiful home, and a future that looked bright. Never in those golden afternoons did I imagine how quickly everything could turn upside down, or how betrayal could shatter even the sunniest of lives. The first crack, the thing about betrayal, is that it rarely storms in out of nowhere. It creeps in quietly, like a hairline crack in a pane of glass, barely noticeable until suddenly it splinters everything. It started with little shifts in Mark's behavior. At first, I noticed he was coming home later than usual, claiming work got busy or traffic was terrible. That didn't seem odd in itself. He'd always put in extra hours when needed, especially when projects at his firm heated up. But soon, there were furtive glances at his phone, text notifications he dismissed too quickly, and the way he excused himself to take calls in the garage with the door pressed shut behind him. He'd grown strangely forgetful too. Birthdays of mutual friends slipped his mind, and he rarely asked about my day, as if his own world was suddenly too full. I tried to reason with myself. After all, everyone goes through rough patches, right? Maybe he was stressed or feeling pressure at work. Maybe we'd fallen into a rut. Still, that little voice of doubt began to nag at me late at night. When I caught Mark shutting his laptop a split second too quickly as I entered our bedroom, my heart caught in my chest. A brief, sick swirl of suspicion I desperately wanted to shake off. Of course, when you're close to someone, you start to pick up on the tiniest changes. I started noticing the way he'd grown quieter around Caleb and me. He still did his share around the house, but his mind seemed constantly elsewhere. Our traditions, movie nights, spontaneous road trips to the beach began to fall by the wayside. When I mentioned it, he'd laugh it off and assure me he was just tired, nothing more. Unable to ignore my worries, I confided in Vanessa. She'd been my confidant for years, the one I turned to for every parenting panic and career dilemma. Those afternoons over coffee felt comforting, at least at first. Never, not in 1,000 dark daydreams, could I have imagined that my anchor was already slipping, or that the friend I trusted most would one day be at the center of my heartbreak. Looking back, it seems obvious. The cracks were there, spreading day by day, growing longer and deeper with each secret. But when you're in the middle of it all, you do everything you can to convince yourself that nothing is wrong. And so, I closed my eyes, hoping the pain would hold, never realizing that the next gust was about to break everything wide open. The devastating discovery. It was the end of June, a heat wave, restless nights, restless hearts. On that particular Saturday, the world felt both ordinary and heavy, as if the California air itself sensed the storm brewing within my home. Caleb was at a pool party, Ralph dozed in the shade, and Mark had said he'd run errands. Though now I remember he never could look me in the eye when he said it. I'm not sure what drew me into the study that day. Maybe the air felt different. Maybe it was just chance. Maybe deep down, I already knew everything and needed to lay it bare. Whatever the cause, there I was, sorting through paperwork on Mark's desk, tidying up where his chaos had recently crept in. His laptop was open, idle. A new message blinked on the screen. A thread from someone labeled V. Carter. My heartbeat kicked up, faster than the rattle of summer cicadas. A dozen thoughts flashed through my mind. This is silly. Vanessa and I share everything. It must be about yoga, or kids, or vacation. But curiosity, that ancient, dangerous instinct, urged me to click. One message, then another. And then it hit me like a cold slap. The words weren't about grocery lists or school drop-offs. They were confessions, jokes laced with longing, memories I didn't share. Phrases stark and intimate hovered in the air. I miss you already. Last night felt so right. I don't know how much longer I can lie. I felt my stomach knot around a shard of glass. It didn't feel real at first. I scrolled, needing to see more, hungry for some mistake. I found photos. Vanessa in the blue dress I'd loaned her, Mark's hand on her knee, their faces lit with the private heat of shared secrets. Receipts from a hotel, a gift shop in a town an hour away. Messages about my habits, even my quirks, a running commentary on how little I suspected. I wanted to scream, to smash the computer, to run, but instead, I sat there, bones frozen, staring into the blinking cursor as if it might blink away the truth. Everything blurred. The memories I cherished were suddenly tainted. Every barbecue, every coffee date, every late night confiding in Vanessa. Had she sat across from me, sharing her betrayal under a mask of sisterly affection? Had Mark kissed my forehead after tangling in her arms? I replayed every moment, searching for signs, for warnings, for any way I could have stopped what was already too far gone. I didn't cry, not then. The pain was white hot, searing away the softness I'd carried for years. I stood up, hands shaking, wiped away invisible tears. I pictured Caleb's laughter, the tremble in Mark's voice when he lied, the warmth I'd mistaken for loyalty. I realized I wasn't just losing a husband or a friend. I was losing the whole story I'd built my life around. Barely able to breathe, I left the study, closing the door on the digital graveyard of my marriage. I wandered outside, the sun still shining as if nothing had changed. The air buzzed, the neighbors' sprinklers whispered. Life in California rolled forward unknowing. I walked until I reached the old swing in our backyard, sat down, and let the numbness wash over me. One hollow, shattering wave at a time. I kept the secret for days, replaying every bit of evidence, letting anger and sorrow battle inside me. There would be no public meltdown, no raging confrontation. Not yet. If betrayal had taught me anything, it was that the deepest wounds are both invisible and slow to heal. Gathering evidence in silence. From the moment the truth revealed itself, I became someone else, someone watchful, methodical, almost frighteningly calm. I think I needed this new version of myself just to survive. Outwardly, life continued its practiced rhythm. Breakfast chatter, school drop-offs, patient afternoons with troubled teenagers at the guidance office. Inside, every sense sharpened. Every movement became a small act of surveillance. At first, I only wanted to be sure. That was how I justified it. If I was going to set my whole world ablaze, I needed facts, irrefutable, hard evidence. I started by cataloging their digital footprints. Late at night, I'd scroll through Mark's phone records, quietly screenshotting text logs that matched the ones I'd found. I'd scan our shared credit card statements, noting every suspicious dinner or unexplained purchase. A bottle of wine here, a room at the Harbor View Hotel there. Receipts told a story their faces would never confess aloud. Part of me resented the quiet deception, the hours spent rooting through the electronic guts of my marriage. But another part relished it, a grim satisfaction in outwitting them at their own game. I discovered Mark kept a second email address, one registered years ago, which he used for travel confirmations and private notes. Vanessa, for her part, was equally meticulous. I found cryptic calendar reminders, yoga retreats in towns an hour away, charity runs that seemed never to happen, girls' nights where she was oddly hard to reach. My own expressions became another tool. I learned to move through our house, my house, like an actress on stage, wearing a mask of practiced ignorance. I smiled, planned family picnics, asked about Vanessa's kids, all the while filing every accidental clue she let slip. Our weekly yoga sessions became an exercise in restraint. I watched the flickers of guilt cross her face, the way she'd hesitate when discussing weekend plans, how her phone vibrated incessantly by her side. I started recording these little tells in a small, locked notebook, each entry building my case. Sometimes, the effort exhausted me. It's draining to be both detective and wounded party, to collect evidence against two people who shaped your identity. But I pressed on, telling myself I was building a shield, not just for me, but for Caleb, who deserved a mother who didn't crumble. In the rare moments when Mark asked about my distant mood, I'd invent work stress, citing student dramas and impossible school board meetings. I watched as he accepted these lies without question. Proof, if I needed more, that deceit had become a household norm. A turning point came when I installed a basic keylogger on Mark's laptop, a step that pushed my comfort to its limit. But what I found sealed everything. Planned rendezvous for anniversaries I thought belonged to us. Private jokes about hiding in plain sight. Even arguments about the risks they were taking. All of it lay bare in stark, digital black and white. I printed out every important thread, labeled each receipt, assembled a neat binder that, if necessary, could take down an empire. The final piece was a confrontation of my own. I visited the hotel where they'd met, making small talk with the front desk under the guise of an event planner researching venues. When the clerk referenced Mark's name and smiled in familiar recognition, my suspicion transformed into certainty. Through it all, I clung to a strange, cold clarity. I did not rage, did not crumble, not yet. I clung to my plan, knowing the value of timing if I was to be forced into battle. On the scorched earth of my dreams, I would pick my ground, my terms, my moment. Until then, I watched and waited, gathering every last piece of the truth, determined that neither of them would walk away unscathed. The plan for revenge. The morning after I closed the last tab in my evidence binder, something in me sharpened. The time for silent suffering was over. I'd spent weeks quietly unpicking the seams of a marriage, months cataloging lies and betrayal in file folders and sleepless notebooks. Now, I wanted them to feel what I had felt: exposed, vulnerable, rippled by consequences. The old American myth says, revenge doesn't pay. I suppose in some cosmic, philosophical sense, ache lingers for everyone. But my plan wasn't born of rage alone. It was strategic, measured, fierce. The life I'd built was about to spin apart, and all I wanted was justice. My kind of justice. The first step was protecting Caleb. I arranged for him to spend 2 weekends out of town with my sister in Santa Barbara. Family was everything to me, and I wasn't about to let my child become collateral in this war. He didn't ask questions when I packed his favorite bag or offered an extra long hug. Maybe he knew, in some deep down, childlike way, that changes lurked on the horizon. Next, legal protection. I reached out to Marcia DeLuca, a tough-as-nails divorce attorney and old family friend. I met her at her office, sliding my evidence folder across the polished oak desk. Marcia scanned the messages and receipts, her eyes growing steely. "You're smart to bring this to me now, Olivia. Let's make sure you land on your feet." We worked together in secrecy. Marcia began drafting the petitions, the financial claims, the custody arrangements, the official documentation of marital misconduct. The shock of betrayal became an asset. By proving Mark's infidelity, I could safeguard my share of our assets and secure a strong case for primary custody. The family house, the 401k, the investments, nothing was left to chance. Marcia walked me through options with a calm, laser-sharp focus. Leak nothing. Keep every receipt. Resist the urge for confrontation until our case was ironclad. The next part was the hardest: severing Vanessa. I rehearsed the conversation in front of the bathroom mirror, breathing steady until even my fear grew bored of waiting. In truth, there was nothing left to salvage. I felt the absence of our friendship like a phantom limb, aching and insistent. But bitterness was a luxury I couldn't afford. I sent Vanessa one terse note. No incrimination, no hint of knowledge. Let's meet next Thursday. Same coffee place. A week away. Just enough time for me to set the final pieces. In the meantime, I carefully combed through the community threads. The things people whispered in the school parking lot. The mothers who noticed absences and odd behavior, but said nothing. I didn't want to air dirty laundry, but the more I uncovered, the more I knew I wasn't alone. It was a small comfort. On Thursday, the air in the coffee shop was thick with the scent of cinnamon and roasted beans. I arrived early. Vanessa walked in, her eyes wary, hair pulled tight. The conversation faltered within seconds, every pleasantry painfully false. The moment her phone buzzed and she glanced down, I saw the truth swirl in her irises, a flash of panic she didn't bother masking. "Why'd you do it?" I asked, voice trembling but even. No accusations, just facts. She tried to stammer an explanation, but the words knotted in her throat. "You didn't just betray me," I whispered. "You broke a family. You broke trust." Her apologies, blunt and desperate, spilled fast. But I had heard enough, and I left her there with her untouched coffee, strings of guilt trailing behind me. That night, while Mark showered, I packed a small bag, my essentials, Caleb's favorite blanket, the photo albums I couldn't abandon. When Mark returned to the bedroom, I set the divorce papers and the stack of evidence on the bed. His face lost all color as he scanned the evidence. Then the resignation that overtook him told me he'd known. Deep down, it was all over. I know everything, I said. And it's done. Do not contact Vanessa. Do not lie to Caleb. From here on, every word is through my attorney. He tried to speak, his voice ragged. But there was nothing left, just the soft hum of defeat, and the realization that his choices had finally arrived at their price. In the weeks that followed, the battle for assets, custody, and reputation played out quietly, but thoroughly. Vanessa vanished from our circle. Her betrayals echoed in the silence of my phone. Mark moved out, his attempts at reconciliation falling flat. The neighborhood watched in careful silence, but the truth had already reshaped everything. At the end of it, I stood with Caleb and Ralph beneath the same rose bushes that had once symbolized a perfect life. My losses were real, and so was the sense of justice. My revenge wasn't loud or vindictive. It was thoughtful, decisive, and final, a reclamation of self and future. The decisive confrontation, the day I'd been simultaneously dreading and preparing for finally arrived, and it felt both inevitable and completely surreal. My nerves thrummed like high-tension wires, every breath sharp in my chest. I'd staged nearly every detail in my head so many times that part of me wanted to surrender to the numb routine. But I reminded myself, this was my moment. This was where I stopped being a passive observer in my own life and chose to step into the storm with eyes wide open. I set the scene purposefully. The living room was quiet, sunlight painting golden pools across the hardwood. Our family's framed photos, benignly watching from the wall. I made sure Caleb was away at a friend's for the afternoon. No matter what shape this confrontation took, he deserved distance from its rawness. My hands shook as I laid out the folder, brimming with evidence. Printouts of emails, screenshots of clandestine chats, photos that even now seemed impossible to reconcile with the people I loved. For a few minutes, I paced. I straightened sofa cushions, checked my phone, listened to the familiar hum of the house, and let the anticipation simmer. Mark came home first. He stepped through the door, expecting the usual quiet comfort, and instead found me standing in the center of the room with a stare he hadn't seen before. He hesitated, one foot still caught on the threshold. "Liv, everything okay?" It took everything in me to answer steadily. "We need to talk." My voice was unfamiliar, stripped of its usual warmth. He frowned, set his keys down, and stepped forward, likely believing the lie that this was just another marital squabble, something to be talked out and brushed aside. I gestured to the sofa, and, after an uneasy pause, he sat. I sat across from him, between us the folder, a barrier, a portfolio of devastation. "Someone else is coming," I said quietly. He looked confused, his brow pinched. He started to ask who, but before he could, the doorbell rang with surgical timing. I'd texted Vanessa the day before. The message had been short and pointed. "Urgent, please, stop by, come alone." No pleasantries, no warning. Still, she came. Our years of friendship carrying some sense of obligation. Or maybe it was just her own guilt that propelled her toward the reckoning. When she appeared in the doorway, Vanessa looked like a ghost of herself. Shoulders tight, skin pale, her eyes flicking between Mark and me, suspicion blossoming into dread. She didn't sit, just hovered behind the arm of an accent chair, hands twisting the strap of her purse. In the hush that followed, I felt the irrevocability of the moment settle in around us. This was no longer an ordinary home. It was now a stage for confession and consequence. I didn't yell. I didn't weep. I wanted the facts to speak for themselves. The cold weight of proof, landing with more force than any accusation. I slid the folder onto the coffee table and opened it, letting the evidence fan out. Emails written in the early morning, photos of secret meeting places, receipts from restaurants I'd never been to, messages brimming with jokes, inside references, confessions, and longing that didn't belong in my story. The two of them stared, Mark silent and pale, Vanessa's eyes bright with tears that refused to fall. "No more lies," I said, my voice growing steadier, even as my heart trembled. "Everything's here. I know about the hotel. I know about the weekends. I know about the explanations and excuses, the whole web you spun while I played the fool." I looked from my husband to my best friend, searching their faces for some sign of regret or remorse. "You don't get to deny this anymore." Vanessa started to sob. The noise, small and messy. Mark buried his face in his hands. Honestly, their reactions, a strange mixture of shame and relief, made me realize how much the truth had weighed on them too. But I couldn't indulge any sorrow or comfort. I kept my posture rigid, unwilling to give them a single thread of solace. I spelled out the new truth with brutal clarity. "I have spoken to a lawyer. Caleb will remain with me. Mark, you will not contact Vanessa again. And Vanessa, you are no longer welcome in my life or my family's." I let that stand in the silence, heavy as stone. Neither tried to argue, not really. Vanessa started to speak, to string out an apology, but I stopped her with a raised palm. "Don't. There is nothing you can say." The next half hour was disorienting. Both Mark and Vanessa alternated between apologizing and making small, desperate attempts to explain. Each word slid over my armor without finding a crack. I made it clear that the conversation was over. "Take what you need and go," I said, "and know that my boundaries are final." After they left, the echo of their absence was almost a physical thing. For the first time in weeks, I sank to the carpet, letting the tears I'd held at bay blur my vision. But even then, I wasn't only broken. I was lighter, clearer, incapable of self-delusion any longer. Later, Caleb came home, sensing something had fundamentally shifted. I didn't offer details. He was too young for the full truth, too gentle-hearted to bear the brunt of adult mistakes. But I made a promise to myself that I would never again shrink behind silence, no matter how much it hurt. My story, from this day forward, would be shaped by honesty, however jagged. In the weeks that followed, the confrontation rippled outward. Life, as it turned out, did not return to its routines. Neighbors noticed subtle changes. One fewer car in the driveway, less laughter during backyard barbecues, the absence of Vanessa's bubbly presence at yoga classes. Rumors flickered around, but I never gave in to the temptation to correct or embellish. My dignity lay in restraint. Mark moved into a rented apartment across town, his visits with Caleb scheduled and businesslike. My old friendship circle faltered, some friends drawing close, others drifting uncomfortably away, uncertain what friendship meant in the aftermath of such a rupture. And yet, despite it all, I felt myself beginning to reclaim pieces of my identity. I rearranged rooms, painted walls, planted new roses in the backyard. Each change, however small, was an act of defiance, a refusal to let my home become a mausoleum of what I'd lost. Nights were hardest, and loneliness stalked me. But now it was an honest loneliness. There were no more secrets nesting in the shadows, no more second-guessing every glance or word. For a while, I watched Mark and Vanessa from a distance, wondering if their bond would survive in the harsh light of exposure. But as far as I could tell, the guilt and shame left craters neither of them seemed able to cross. Vanessa moved out of town, her life shrinking to a handful of social media posts and rare, awkward check-ins with mutual friends. Mark, too, fell silent, his texts to me about divorce logistics, curt and formal. His relationship with Caleb, awkward but sincere. I found a strange comfort in that. I had drawn the lines, and they held. What I did next surprised me. I took a solo weekend trip up the coast. Just me and Ralph, the border collie. We walked on empty beaches, wine tousling my hair, salt air stinging my cheeks. I brought no evidence, no reminders, just me, my grief, and the faint outline of who I would become. I wrote in my journal, not about what I lost, but about small things that delighted me. The pattern of light on the sand, the way Ralph chased the tide, the joy of ordering breakfast without checking anyone else's preferences. For the first time, I caught glimpses not only of healing, but of something like hope. The confrontation in my living room was not just an end, but a beginning, a painful, necessary unmasking. It forced me to see myself, not as a victim, but as someone who could set boundaries, speak truth, and demand better. I didn't forgive easily, and I knew scars would linger. But I learned that honesty, once chosen, carries its own freedom. That chapter closed. I'm not sure what comes next, but I refuse to let betrayal be my defining story. In standing my ground, in facing down two people who meant everything to me, I took back the narrative. I choose what I become and how I face the future, even if I do it with a heart stitched together, with hard-won courage, one day, one choice at a time, ending a new beginning. After the dust of confrontation and heartbreak had finally settled, I found myself staring at the embers of my old life. The home that once echoed with laughter, now strangely quiet, the routines that no longer fit, and the absence of those who once felt inseparable. I never realized how much space grief could take up in a person's life until it filled every room of mine, lingering like perfume after someone leaves, sweet and aching all at once. In the earliest days, survival was my only goal. I became a creature of small rituals. I'd sit at the kitchen table in the golden California mornings, fixing 2 cups of coffee out of stubborn habit, only to end up drinking both myself. I'd run my fingers over the keys of Mark's abandoned piano, sometimes pressing a chord or two, letting the notes hang in silence. There were evenings I'd find myself standing on the back porch as the sky blazed with pink and orange, whispering to the universe questions it could never answer. Why us? Why me? The ache of betrayal was a physical thing, a stone I carried in my chest, heavy and unyielding. But strange as it may sound, pain became a teacher. Those empty hours, which at first seemed only to stretch endlessly, started yielding gifts I never expected. Self-knowledge, resilience, even glimmers of something like hope. I realized I had spent years living for others, for Mark, for Caleb, even for Vanessa, all the while shelving pieces of myself for the sake of peace and harmony. Now, there was an odd freedom in that emptiness. I could choose what to keep and what to leave behind. I knew I had to start somewhere. My first step was to reclaim my space. I changed the house, not because I hated what it had been, but because I was ready for it to become something new. I painted the living room a cool shade of blue, a color I'd always loved, but never picked, because Mark preferred neutrals. I boxed up photo frames, mementos of anniversaries, and old friendships, stashing some away in the attic and discarding others that only sharpened the edges of my grief. In place of what I removed, I filled the shelves with books I'd meant to read for years, brought home bright sunflowers from the market, and let Caleb pick wild new patterns for his sheets and towels. Bit by bit, the house began to look like us. Just us, no longer haunted by a story that wasn't mine anymore. Caleb, in his own way, began to mend too. Children sense more than adults ever say, but they are also astonishing in their ability to adapt. We made new traditions. Saturday pancakes at a different diner each month. Movie nights on the couch with Ralph curled between us. There were hard conversations, of course, and tears, especially on quiet nights when the shadows seemed to press in. But with him, I was honest.
Here's the package.
I told him people sometimes make mistakes that hurt others deeply, but that love between parent and child is bigger and braver than any wound. He taught me as much about forgiveness as I ever taught him about growing up. Work became both refuge and challenge. For a time, I threw myself into counseling my students, determined not to let my personal failures bleed into the advice I gave them. Ironically, it made me a better listener, a more patient, empathetic presence. I learned not to assume that anyone's surface told the full story. My colleagues, some awkward, some supportive, respected the understated dignity with which I handled changes at home. The gossip in our small town ebbed with time. Eventually, people stopped whispering and simply let Olivia Brooks be again, if slightly changed. And then there was the question of justice. The legal battles had left their scars, but I emerged with my share of the house, modest savings, and most importantly, full custody of Caleb. Mark faded to a background figure, present only in co-parenting logistics, his apologies ringing hollow and redundant. Vanessa, last I heard, had moved far away. There was no reconciliation, no dramatic scene of forgiveness. I realized, with a certain pride, that I did not need closure from her or from Mark. Some wounds simply become part of you, like lines on a map you learn to live with, pointing forward rather than back. Healing, I discovered, is not linear. There were days when anger surged, at Mark for tearing through our promises, at Vanessa for weaponizing my trust. There were nights when loneliness felt suffocating, and flashbacks threatened to swallow me whole. But these feelings ebbed with time, replaced by others: quiet contentment, cautious optimism, even laughter. The world outside my pain did not wait for me to catch up. It drew me forward, one small choice at a time. My friend circle, battered but not broken, closed ranks. Vanessa's absence created space for new confidants. Women I met through book clubs and school events, neighbors I'd only known in passing before. I learned to invest in other friendships, to let vulnerability and humor become healing balms. I accepted invitations, said yes to new adventures, a hiking trip up the coast, salsa lessons, even though I tripped over my own feet, volunteering at the animal shelter after Caleb begged for another dog to keep Ralph company. There was, of course, fear. Fear of trusting again. Fear of ever being that vulnerable with another adult. Dating seemed unthinkable at first, but I eased into it, slowly and on my terms. I learned to spot warning signs, to prize honesty over charm, to ask for what I needed, and, to my own surprise, to enjoy my own company most of all. I realized that romance, while sweet, was not the only form of love that could fill my life. Through it all, I clung fiercely to the life Caleb and I were building, day by day. Holidays became smaller, but more meaningful. We spent Thanksgiving hiking on the beach, Christmas with close family and chosen friends, instead of big neighborhood gatherings. For my birthday, Caleb made a card that said, "Best mom ever, strong like a superhero." It made me cry, but for once, the tears came from pride, not pain. Every so often, Mark would call to discuss logistics or send a brief update about one of Caleb's upcoming soccer games. The bitterness in those exchanges faded with time, a dull ache replaced by a curiosity for the peace that comes when you simply let go. I occasionally wondered how he slept at night, whether the choices he made gnawed at him the way they used to torment me. In truth, I stopped caring. The most radical act of self-preservation, I discovered, was to redirect my energy inward, turning painful memories into fuel for something better. The idea of forgiveness changed for me, becoming less about condoning what happened and more about releasing the claim those people had on my peace. Mark and Vanessa did not deserve forgiveness, but I did. I deserved the freedom to grieve, to heal, and to thrive. Eventually, anger lost its edge. What replaced it was a sense of hard-earned wisdom. But new beginnings are not always grand or cinematic. They are slipstreamed into daily life, felt in the decision to cut my hair short for the first time since college, or in the simple pleasure of running with Ralph at dawn, the cool bay, air sharp against my cheeks. I started a journal, chronicling the triumphs and stumbles, bits of poetry and plans for the future. I bought myself birthday flowers. I took solo road trips, discovered hidden gems along the Pacific coast, tasted new foods just because I could. Each time I tried something new, I marveled at how the world seemed bigger, my place in it both fragile and filled with promise. Perhaps the biggest breakthrough came the afternoon I found an old photo of myself, taken before marriage, before motherhood, before all the expectations and disappointments. My smile was wide, unguarded. It hit me. I wasn't mourning a man or a marriage as much as I was mourning the version of myself I'd neglected. That younger me deserved another chance, a chance unfettered by broken trust, forever defined by hope rather than loss. So, I dream again, not the small, safe dreams of survival, but daring dreams. Maybe one day I'll move into a house by the sea, or write the book I'd always threatened, but never begun. Maybe I'll fall in love again, or maybe I won't. The point is, I get to choose. My story is no longer confined by what happened to me, but instead by how I choose to respond, to rebuild, to risk joy again. Caleb and I marked the first anniversary of our new life with homemade cake on the patio, candles flickering in the dusk. "What should we wish for?" he asked. I smiled at him, the truest, bravest part of my heart, and said, "Let's wish for every tomorrow to be a little brighter than today." We closed our eyes, blew out the candles together, and for once, I believed that wish might just come true. Looking back, I see the pain as a chapter, not the whole book. I see the betrayal as a fire that nearly gutted me, but also cleared space for something unexpected. Resilience, courage, even a stubborn grace. It taught me to accept life's unpredictability, but not to surrender my happiness to it. Every step forward is a quiet defiance, a reminder that healing is an act of rebellion against those who once made me feel small. Sometimes, on quiet nights, I still grieve the life I lost. Grief, I learned, is not a sign of weakness, but of love. It means what came before mattered deeply, but every sunrise strengthens the foundation of the life I'm building now, one imperfect, beautiful day at a time. And as I tuck Caleb into bed, his voice soft and sleepy, I am reminded that love endures, grows, and makes room for new beginnings, even after the harshest endings. If I could go back, I'm not sure I would change anything, hard as that is to admit. What happened forced me to reckon with truths I might have otherwise ignored. It broke me open, but it also proved that I am capable of surviving, and even thriving, beyond betrayal's shadow. Our home is different now, filled not with what was lost, but with what endures: laughter, honest conversations, the steadfast love between mother and child, the contented sighs of a dog at my feet. I have come to believe that the truest form of revenge is living well, refusing to be defined by the harm others inflict. I don't want my story to be a cautionary tale or a tragedy. I want it to be a testament to the power of starting over. There is no single way to heal, no formula for moving on, just the simple act of waking each day and choosing, as best I can, to move forward, to love fiercely, and to live without apology. So here I am, on the other side, older, perhaps wiser, certainly braver. If someone asks me what I've learned, I'll say this: you can endure the very thing you thought would end you. You can lose nearly everything and still discover, to your own amazement, that you're still standing. And more than that, you're shining, just by virtue of refusing to be diminished. There are scars, yes, but also new skin, soft and resilient. The California sun pours in through my window every morning, the same as it ever did. But now, I meet each sunrise, not with dread or regret, but with something new and precious: the slow, hopeful confidence that comes from surviving. A new beginning, written every day, on my own terms. And that is more than enough.